Thank you for joining me on Lizzie's workshop. Today I'm going to be making a canvas, and this canvas is actually for my husband, or was inspired by my husband. I basically put a lot of things in there that I think of as him. So I started out by covering the entire canvas with the gel matte medium, the Golden brand gel matte medium. And what I have here is this. It's a napkin, but it's one of those ones from the fancy restaurants where they're so thick and they're so soft that they're almost like having a cloth napkin, but they're disposable. So I thought that this would be a really nice, long-lasting kind of thing, and I knew that depending on how much of the gel medium I added to it, it would maintain a bit of that softer look, and it would maintain, or the way it would absorb the sprays and inks and stuff like that, it would keep this soft texture, and even when you touched it, it would not go all brittle and hard. There would always be some element of softness to it. So that's why I used this napkin. Well, and it was sitting on my desk when I was doing a cleanup and I needed to do something with it. So I had always intended to use it for a mixed media project, but I didn't know if I was going to rip it up or use it whole, or ink it up first, or cut it up for cardstock, or use it for watercolor. And I could have done any of those things with it. But this is where it ended up. I was cleaning my workspace up and to get a fresh perspective, and this ended up just ending up on a pile of stuff that I was going to use next. So because this napkin is so thick, it really took a lot of effort to get it to stick, to stay where I put it, to do as it was told. I ended up doing it just having really goopy fingers and trying to goop everything down step by step, going all the way around the canvas and reinforcing what I'd already created, and then trying to, you know, lock down here and there. And the thing about this is that I'm spinning the canvas, so, and then I'm going over what I've already done and rearranging it. So what's happening there is I'm putting the matte medium on it, and then I'm leaving it. It's not doing what I want it to do, so I'm going to leave it. Then I'm going to come back around with more matte medium and do it again. And what happens with this layering effect is that the first layer kind of solidifies a little bit, or becomes a little bit more tacky, and that allows you to actually get this napkin or this cloth to do as I want it to do. So I went around and around and around from the beginning of this part of the project, and it ended up being what I wanted it to be. Then I let it sit overnight just to make sure that it was actually dry. And now I'm wanting a brown texture because I'm thinking of dirt, actually. And so I'm using the Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist for Chalkboard, and the color is called London Fog. And if you saw that there, what I did was I took another one of those really nice, rich napkins, and I wiped up any extra ink that I had sprayed anywhere else. Might as well use it up instead of wasting it. All the glimmer mists and sprays are always so expensive that you really don't want to even waste one little drop. Maybe that's just the scrap hoarder in me. So I started to dry this. I wanted everything to absorb nicely in there, and it just wasn't working out. So I let it dry, and I went and cut out that little owl. And then I came back here and I started inking. And what I'm inking with is the Tim Holtz Distress Paints. And I'm just using a layering and a spackling because I just want really different colors and textures, as if you were looking at a dirt hill, a dirt hole. So I'm using old paper, antique linen, brushed corduroy, tea dye, and peeled paint, I think, is the green I end up with on there. So yeah, those are just the distress paints. And then I took my paintbrush, and I didn't want the polka dots, so I just kind of went in there and kind of streaked it up a little bit. And then I sprayed it with water, or I sprayed it down again with the London Fog Chalkboard mist from Tattered Angels. And then I wanted the hole to be darker so that whatever I put in it will stand out against it. So I grabbed this brand new black Smooch Spritz, and the color is Black Velvet. So yeah, I was assuming it would be a little bit of a matte finish to it, and it worked out absolutely perfectly. The only thing is that these smooch spritzes really make me crazy, because I find that I either have to use it and then soak the nozzle in hot water, or only use it once and then just use it for like flicking paint all over the place afterwards. So I don't know. They kind of make me feel frustrated. So what I'm doing here is I'm just using regular old school glue and grass. So this grass is from a different hobby. This grass is from, it's called Citadel. Citadel is the company that makes it, and it's basically for Games Workshop, which is a tabletop wargaming company. And the reason that I have this grass is because my husband is a tabletop war game or whatever. And so this grass, he was using it for one of his terrain projects to make boards, to make the game boards, and then he decided that he didn't like this, or that this grass wasn't the perfect trend, or some silly thing like that. So he gave it to me, and it's been sitting in my craft drawer waiting for me to do something with it for about 5 years. So now is the time, and the fact that I'm using it on a canvas for him, that's kind of fitting, I think. So what I'm creating here is, like, there's going to be a little burrowing owl that it flicked across the screen there, and he's going to go in the hole. So this is the little burrowing owl's hole. So around it, I want it to make it look like dirt, and a little bit of grass, and a little bit of this, and a little bit of that. And so as you can see, I'm patting on the grass and onto the glue, and making sure that it's nice and thick and full of color and life. Now, with this, it's just like when you use glitter. It is a staticky substance that gets absolutely everywhere. So you will end up with finding this, you know, all over the side of your pants, and all over your work desk, and all over your chair, and your floor, and your socks, and your everything. One thing I do want to point out is, when you're working with these kinds of substances, like glitter or grass or whatever, see where my coffee cup there is on the left-hand side of the screen? Yeah, don't do that. You get very grassy coffee, which doesn't hurt anything. but it is surprising to get the little hairs from this fake grass in your throat, and you're coughing up like a cat coughing up a hairball, which was kind of interesting. But anyway, so what I'm doing down there is I'm adding rocks, and I'm also adding little teeth, like shark teeth, and I'm adding little bones and stuff like that. And my thought is, I had this bag of treasures from my son that I pulled out of his pants pockets, and so they seem to be just perfectly fitting for this project, because little owls, when they eat things whole, right? So then they end up kicking out the hairballs or the fluff balls, and all the bones and teeth and everything of the animals end up coming out in their excrement. So I thought having that around the front entrance of the owl's little hole would be fitting. And so I just go around and I add a whole bunch of little rocks and stuff here and there, just to add a little bit of realism to the whole thing. The grass doesn't look 100% real either, so and it is a canvas, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So that is what it is. But yeah, so I added rocks and I added the fake grass, and then I had to let it dry, and it wasn't drying very quickly, so I ended up covering it with my other napkin and using the heat gun. Well, why did I cover it with the napkin? Well, have you ever accidentally used your heat gun when you have something covered in glitter? Yeah, airborne. So I didn't want all this grass airborne. I already had grass in my coffee. So I ended up just covering it up, and then, you know, using my heat gun on it to try and dry it just a little bit. Now I'm testing how dry it is, and I wanna scrape the loose grass off of where the rocks and stuff are, because I wanted to make sure that they were nice and clean and clear that you could see them. I didn't want the grass to dry to the rocks. and you know, trying to get it all off. It doesn't all come off, of course, because it's one of those static cling things, but you get off as much as you can. So here's my little owl that I fussy cut, and this owl came from a calendar, and the calendar's, I don't know, I don't even know what year the calendar's from. I didn't even look. I just looked at the images, and that's one of the big locations that I go to for my fussy cutting stuff, well, especially when I'm looking for animals, is calendars, because, well, and background scenery, because calendars tend to have really great photography. If people wouldn't put people's art into a calendar and publish it like the phone companies and the banks and such, unless the art was good and that would, you know, make people happy. And the best subjects for those kinds of calendars are animals and landscapes. So that's what we ended up with here. So I let him dry overnight. I didn't want to use my heat gun on it because I didn't know how that matte medium would go on that leaf. This is kind of an experiment. I knew that the leaf was brittle because I had dried it in a book, but I didn't know what would happen when I added the matte medium gel. What I was hoping would happen is that it would make it a little bit more flexible. It would bind the particles together of the crispiness of it, and it would kind of blanket it and make it more of a plasticky something or other, rather, you know, still really delicate, but at least I would be able to do something with it. So what happened here was, when I let the little owl dry overnight, he kind of buckled because the moisture from the matte medium gel, that was wet, so he ended up buckling. And I just kind of went with it and thought, you know what, if you're gonna buckle, I'm gonna use that. And you know, it bowed out his belly, and so I thought, I'm gonna fill that void, so to speak, of where his belly bent out and where his head bent out, and I'm gonna fill it with these fabric squares so that he kind of has a 3D effect. So he kind of looks like a pudgy little owl, like he's supposed to. So I just kind of layered it on, cut it up to try and make him the right shape. I didn't want him to be too square in his belly and so on. So I just kind of kept layering until I was happy with the depth and the shape that I ended up with. And all the little squares that I'm cutting out here, I use them again. If I wanted to just have him as a 3D effect, I could have just put him on as you know, on risers or on foam squares or something. But what I was really going for here was that he would never fall off. So I wanted to glue him on flat, and that just wasn't going to happen. So I used all the little triangles too. I just kept layering and layering till I used up all the little pieces of the squares. And then I put him in the hole. So while the fabric is still wet, because what I want to happen is I want the canvas, the bird, and the fabric all to become one cohesive unit. So while he's still wet and while the fabric is still wet, I wanted to get him all pinned down and smoothed out and evened out so that everything would dry together as one solid piece. So that's what I end up doing, is just brushing on the mixed medium gel and getting it in all the creases and making sure everything is nice and tight. And so here's my little Canadian burrowing owl stuck in his hole holding a Canadian maple leaf. So I was trying to get this leaf to be glued down, and I couldn't use the matte medium gel. It wasn't drying fast enough. It wasn't going to stick good enough. So what I grabbed was the, Aleene's quick dry glue, but it still wasn't drying fast enough because the texture of that the texture of the napkin is so rippled. It's such a rippled effect that there's not very many contact points, but I knew that I did need to push down the leaf and have some contact points. So now it ends up rippling between the different little swirls or joints or curves in the landscape. So, excuse me, all I'm doing here is I'm using the white gesso to create sort of a frame or an end point to the image. And I was thinking that I would use black, but there was already so much black in the picture, and the little owl had so much white in him that I felt that I needed to expand the white in order to create a little bit of finality on the edge. So I used the white gesso instead. And here what I'm doing is I'm just trying to outline him because I did want to go over with my Jelly Roll black pen afterwards. So I'm just trying to put a white edge around him so you can see my black pen and I won't have to draw on the owl. And then I'm putting the gesso and scuffing it around the edge. And then I'm wiping it off of the owl because I don't want the owl to be any more white. He's got enough white on him. So I'm just kind of moving moving it all and stuff like that. I don't want it to be a soft edge, but I didn't want him to be so stark against the black. So I just used a baby white because he's been covered in matte medium gel. He's not gonna be destroyed that easily by a wet wipe. If he was just a magazine, then the gesso wouldn't have come off so easily. So then what I'm doing is I'm making 3 little banners, and they're the titles for my husband's YouTube channel. And so his name on YouTube is Mr. Malorian. His the team for the wargaming that he does is called the Orc Tactical Team, and the noise that all of his little animals or orcs or whatever make is this war. They basically go wah. So one of the banners just says wah on it. So I didn't know how I was going to attach this, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to put holes through my canvas, and I'm just going to use brads. And I'm using Manly brads, and they look like screw tops, like the tops of the screws that have an X in them. And then in order to keep the ink all nice, I ended up covering them with matte medium gel, and then I ran them through a little bit of the brushed corduroy distress paint and then rubbed it off because I just wanted a skiff of texture to it. And then I took the early espresso Stampin' Up ink and I just scuffed the edge a little bit more. And in order to keep the banners down, I put these Zotz glue dots on because I have them rippling. So any contact points I do have, I put the Zotz glue dots on. Then I took my Jelly Roll pen and went around the little owl, and I thought, you know what, this doesn't have to be absolutely perfectly realistic, so I'm going to add some stitching in there. I'm going to add an outline around him. I'm going to add some stitching on the banner. I didn't want to draw on the owl because he was the perfect image as it was. And then I signed my signature, which I always sign my name either on the back or the front. And it still needed something, and the leaf wasn't really well defined, and it didn't seem to be exactly what I wanted. So I just took this early espresso ink and went around the leaf and over the texture of the leaf. So there's the teeth and the skeletons of the little guy, and here he is looking crazy with his Canadian leaf. The sign for my husband's team, and finished product. Thank you for joining me on Lizzie's Workshop.